Okay, family, we're back. This is going to be as basic as it gets because I don't have the tools that I was working with a couple years back. It's been a long journey. I've been ill and I have a broken spine. It's caused a lot of issues with my ability to keep this project and this work going. So forgive me for the time off. But I have found some very interesting alignments in the heavens, and I wanted to share it with the watchmen so that we can get the word out. So here's what I found. I'm going to show you the end first and then the beginning. So we're here on Stellarium. We have the moon full in the Golden Gate. In the Silver Gate. And we have Vesta, the asteroid, in the hand of Orion, also in the Silver Gate. You have the moon in the hand of Auriga. For those of you who've done your Mazzaroth studies, it was widely known in ancient times that these gates, the silver and the golden gates, were considered portals. And these are the times that we look for alignments within these portals because they become very, very strong. Stronger signs than when we see them in other houses or other parts of the house. And when I say the house, that is essentially a constellation. In ancient times, they were called houses, and when we do our studies on how the sun is a representation of Christ, the Messiah, and that he is essentially running a race. And if you do deep research on how that race unfolds, then there's a great detailed story in the heavens. Most of the believers today don't have that understanding. They don't have the ability to grasp the enormity of what is being presented to them in the heavens. The stars are telling a story minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, month by month. These are all great stories that are unfolding to us, but I believe all of us have lost the keys to the deciphering of how this all plays out. But what I found is something that, as a mazzaroth watchman, it screams to me, and these kinds of alignments don't happen as often as you would think. I believe that every asteroid, every comet, every star, every planet, which were considered stars also, moving stars, their positioning in the houses speak volumes. So what we're looking at here is the moon in its full phase inside of the Silver Gate, right in the hand of Auriga, and at the same time Vesta, which, if you've done any kind of story about the Vestal virgins, Vesta is a definite sign of virgins. And so we have Orion, who has always been a figure of Christ, and Auriga, that's always been a figure of Christ. And we can see here, that Ariga is holding, and sometimes it's a lamb, sometimes it's a goat, but it is basically a sign of the sacrifice. And then we also have Orion, who was considered Christ the conqueror. And so we have the sacrifice, the two missions of Messiah. We have in his hand the moon, we have in his hand the virgins. On that same day, we see in the constellation of Aries, you see Uranus. You can say it in many different ways, but that is a picture of heaven. And we see that the constellation of Aries is holding Uranus at its rear hinds. And then you see Jupiter, who is directly over the head of Cetus. And this is the dragon figure that we have in ancient times. It's always been the dragon, and the dragon was always basically, essentially, this was the connection point, holding the fishes back from where they needed to go. So the dragon was in control of these fishes through these bonds or ties, and Jupiter crushing the head of the dragon or the serpent. And then we have Saturn in Aquarius. We're going to have to do a whole nother video on that. I don't have the tools today to go into details of that, but we have the sun in the Golden Gate. And when the sun is in the Golden Gate and the moon is in the Silver Gate, it is a sign of the portal of the gods, which is the Golden Gate, and then the portal of the humans, or in ancient time there was the lesser gods, there was the demigods, these tales come to us, showing us that there was a way for these lower entities to enter into the heavenly realms through these portals. If you watch some of the movies that Hollywood's put out about stargates and portals, and if you do research on what CERN's doing, you'll realize that there are very specific times that these things magnify the energies for them to use these portals, and in most cases it's some type of alignment with these gates, and certain planets being in certain houses generates more power for these alignments. So we have the sun in the Golden Gate. There is scriptures in the book of John where he sees a vision of Christ seated on the throne in the heavens. And if you scroll in, let's do that really quick and see if this version of Stellarium will allow us to get a better view. No, this one's not, and so that's about the best I can do. But there are other versions. I don't have it up here. I'm just using what I have access to. This is a really old computer I'm working on, and I don't have the other Stellariums loaded on it. I'm blessed to be able to even have access to using this one to do this. But we see the sun is inside of the Golden Gate, and um, typically what we see is the sun inside of the Golden Gate from the some say the 20th, some say the 21st, but essentially there's the 3 days and the 3 nights that the sun is essentially dead. These are where all of our ancient holidays come from. This is where we get Christmas and many of the other ancient pagan holidays, and how all of these myths became associated with the sun, and then the Christian church turned those into, Christ, which in the ancient times it was known as that also. We see that the sun in the book of Psalms, that the sun is as a bridegroom, and we know that the bridegroom is Christ. So it's not a stretch for us to be able to use the sun as Messiah, showing us where he's going and what he's doing, if these things are built that way. And what I've found in my research is that it's mind-blowing to be able to see when you have all the pieces in play and you understand what these houses really mean from the ancient times. Modern astrology has gone astray. They pin everything to a specific time thousands of years ago, and the problem with that is the precession of the equinoxes make everything off in today's world. So in astrology, my sun sign would be Leo, but if we just do our mazzaroth research and look on Stellarium, and you can use it in many star programs, but you'll see that in late July that the sun is not in Leo, it's in Cancer. And that happens because of the precession of the equinox. And so if you're not actually looking at the signs live, then you're going to be off. I see a lot of watchmen tying their beginning of the year to solstices and equinoxes, and all that changes throughout time. And the reason is because of the precession of the equinox. So you have to actually look at it in real time and make your adjustments in real time, because it's not, the story has to fit the houses, not the opposite way. And that's the mistake that I believe that the majority of the followers of Christ are making. Even the watchmen that are showing some of these signs in the heavens, they're coming at it from an understanding that they can use just the sun or the counts of the moon or the sun, and that can't work out, because that's not what Enoch says. Enoch, it's a 3-part. It's really 3 different separate charts. There's a solar calendar, there is a lunar calendar, and then there's also a star calendar. and a lot of people are missing that there has to be a very specific alignment with certain certain houses, and then certain stars within those houses, and has to be past a certain point of the year. That's where we use these equinoxes, but most of us don't have enough time and study of how the zodiac or the mazzaroth is our timekeeper. It's not necessarily just the sun, and it's not necessarily just the moon. We have to align all of these. So I see a lot of watchmen, they're talking about having November the 7th or May the 7th as the beginning of the year. The problem is that in order for that to work with the sun in Aries, in the 7th month, you have to have the sun in Virgo. And on May the 7th, if you go 6 months later, you will not have the sun in Virgo, you'll have the sun in Libra. And so that creates a problem because it doesn't align with the star charts. And so we have to have alignment of the sun and the moon and the stars. And the moon comes in to play, I believe it's every 2 to 4 years, we will have an exact realignment of the sun and the moon in very specific places. And those are our signs. And in the ancient times, the what they considered the magi, who were they called them astrologers back then, but it wasn't the same, not even close to the astrology that we have today. These Zoroastrians and priests of the Middle East, and the priests of Babylon, and the priests of Persia, and some of them were even coming from China, and they would all get together and share their findings and their star research. And in the ancient times, the TV was the stars. And so they spent their time looking up. And that's what we're missing today, is the ability to decode what we're being shown, because we haven't had enough time to grasp what we're being shown. So I'm hoping to be able to fill in some of the gaps. I'm pretty deep into this, but I feel like I'm a baby because I'm shown so much every time I look. It's overwhelming. If any of you are subscribed to the Hourly Watch channel, you'll see how Patrick comes up with so many different things, and the findings are just incredible, and all those things are in play, and none of them are out of play. All of these signs are being shown to us, just like if you're driving down the road and you have to know far enough in advance for your exit, and you don't want to miss your exit. Let's just say that if you don't get off at this exit, that you're going to be on a really long, hard road, and for the next exit, and so you want to make sure you don't miss the exit. So there's a bunch of things that you're looking for to make sure that you miss lines to decipher or decode the star language. So when the sun is in the Golden Gate and the moon is in the Silver Gate, it's a great sign. And if we look at the ancient stories of the gods being in control of the Golden Gate, and what I mean by gods is that term. A lot of Christians get confused about that. That term is a title. It's not the name of the Father or the name of the prime creator. That's a title, just like Lord. God is not a name, it's a title. And that title was also given to the angels. And that's why in the scriptures we find that, some scriptures say the gods came into contact with the women because they found them fair, and then they procreated with them, and that's where we get the Nephilim. And depending on the Bible or the interpretation that you read, you'll find that there's different words for that, but it all comes down to the same thing. These were considered gods, and they could use the portal of the Golden Gate to come down into our realm. And I believe this is where the angels all have to portal through to get to our world. And then reversed, you have the Silver Gate, which is the opposite, and that's essentially the Enoch Gate. And this is where man goes to the Father, and mankind is going up instead of coming down, and that's a representation of the Silver Gate. But we're going to go through the rest of these signs because what I found here, to me, completes the story of this marriage that we see in the heavens this year. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about this year because these things don't align every year, and they don't show us the same story every year, because every year, every month, every day, they're in different positions, moving into different positions, just like actors in a movie that are going to different places and doing different things to show us different things within the movie set. So here we have the sun in the Golden Gate. You also have this Sagittarius bow, and this Sagittarius bow is like a boat, because this Golden Gate is a river. And if you scroll back and you do your mazzaroth research, you can see how this is like a river in heaven. And this is always been in ancient times considered a boat. This area of the Milky Way is like a river in heaven, and you can even see that the boat here is directly on the river. And then when we get back to Sagittarius, we can see how this bow is also right on the river. And then we can see here how the sun is essentially on the deck of the boat, as if to captain the ship. and we have Mercury and Mars. And in my mazzaroth research, what I find is Mars as a war symbol or a symbol of Michael, the warrior angel. And then Mercury has always been a sign of the messenger or Gabriel. And that's very fitting for the story that we're about to break down. They're both on the opposite side of the Golden Gate. And for those of you who haven't seen my Kadash Culture channel, I don't have access to that channel anymore. I was essentially just cut out, and I cannot get back. I can't get my access back to that. But you can go and research most of my older videos that are 3 years or more. I was doing essentially 100% stellarium mazzaroth research, and you can see how we determined that between the legs of Ophiuchus, this section here, when things come out of Libra into the crab's claws, there is a protection here. It's considered the huppah, and if you do your research on ancient Israelite weddings, or they do it in Jewish weddings today also. There are other cultures that have the same representation in their weddings, but this huppah is where the couples would get married. In ancient times, it was actually a tent, and this is where the marriage was consummated, and then the guests would be waiting outside of the tent, and then when the couple came out from the consummation, then everybody would be outside of the tent cheering, and it was a different culture. They all celebrated together that consummation of the marriage. Also, it wasn't just guests going to the vows. It would be an entire event. So we see Mars and Mercury right outside of the tent, essentially right at the Golden Gate, watching the son or the bridegroom drive the boat. So we'll leave it at that. But let's go over one more constellation, and then we see Venus, which is also a representation of Christ, in the constellation of Libra. And you can see that in two more senses. Judgment. We also have we're weighed in the balances, and then we also have the ancient representation of Libra, which was not scales, but a sacred mound or a holy altar. And so we have Venus, which is Christ at the altar, which is also a representation of a wedding. And then what we have that's very, very interesting, I'm just going to come over here and go back to this silver gate. We have a full moon in the silver gate with the Vestal Virgins as a representation. And this essentially completes the story of the ending of this, what we're being shown in the heavens. So what we're going to do is we're going to back up, and we're going to see how on on the 12th. All right, give me a minute. We're going to get this pulled up so you can see what I found here. So on the 12th at midnight, okay, so here we are at midnight, as it's going into the 13th, November 2023. This is from the west coast of Oregon, and we have the midnight hour, and we see the sun and the moon directly aligned in the Libra constellation, with Mars there as a witness. And this, if we look at this from the ancient perspective, this is the sun, the bridegroom, and the moon, the bride, aligning at the altar for the marriage, with Michael as a witness. And then we see on 12/13, 1 month later, we have, if you look at this line of this right leg of Ophiuchus, and we take this as the tent. Then we have the sun, the bridegroom, and the moon just about to exit the chuppah. And again, Michael is a witness. And we also have Mercury as a witness on the other side of the Golden Gate. So we have our messenger and our witness, and both of them are on the edge of on this day at this time. They're both still inside of the chuppah, just about to come out. And this is a great sign in the heavens for the marriage. And I looked and I could not find this alignment again until 2028. It does not happen again this way, and it doesn't happen as orderly as this alignment. So again, these signs are being shown to us in the heavens, and they have very specific meaning. And I believe what we're seeing is the signs of the bride, and we're seeing the possibility of an escape of some type of rapture. I believe there's many different things going on, and there's many different groups, and not all of us are going to be called to the same ministry, and some will be used to bring more sheep into the fold, and I've seen signs for that. But let's go back to this ending, because this ending has one more thing that I want to show or talk about. When the ancient knowledge that was passed on about the sun and the death of the sun and the 3 days in the grave. Many of you watchmen will know this representation. The sun dies on December the 21st, or sorry, December the 22nd. On the 21st is the last day that the sun is above the ecliptic, and then the sun goes below, essentially being dead, goes below the ecliptic, and it doesn't move for 3 days and 3 nights. And then on December the 25th, it starts to raise again. And what we see here is this sign culminating on December the 26th, essentially, not too long after midnight. This all comes to a culmination. And one of the things that I was shown in this process is there's it's a documentary, and it's called Star of Bethlehem. And for those of you who have been on my Kadesh Culture channel, you'll see that I reference that a lot. And one of the things that I learned from that, watching that documentary over and over and over again, is in ancient times, the Israelites considered a child's birth or their coming into the world as conception, not the actual physical birth. And so what this gentleman showed on Stellarium is that on December the 25th, there was, I believe it was 3 BC, there was a very specific alignment on December the 25th that was undeniable to me, that it was the sign of the conception of Christ. And if we look at the timing gestation of a birth, then we'll see that there's that September birth alignment. And it makes perfect sense from my research that I've done and the things that I found in the stars. And to see this alignment all come within that day, because it's just the next morning, it's like a bat hitting me across the head. I can't deny that this is one of the greatest signs that I've ever seen in the heavens when it comes to that marriage representation. We also have the boats representing, the Noah story, and the flood that's happening right now in Israel, and the flood that's going to spread all over the whole planet, because a lot of us don't realize what's been put in place all over the whole world, with infiltrators who are ready for that day and that hour, and they're going to be like a flood. So it's time for us as watchmen to look up and to gain as much traction as we can over the next month to be able to show in more detail, because there's many watchmen that'll find a lot more than I'll be able to find right now, because I cannot really do this work much. I don't have the tools that a lot of the other watchmen have, I'm literally using my phone to film this on Stellarium. I don't have any of the software necessary. I'd love to get some instruction on the easiest, cheapest, fastest way to capture your screen and do that kind of work. If anybody out there can help me, that'd be greatly appreciated. But I'm doing well enough to where I can stay on top of looking at the signs now, and I'm going to come back and share with the body as much as I can. So if I could ask for your prayers for strength and for wisdom and for insight, that would be greatly appreciated. I need as much help as I can get with my health, and it's really important for me to do this work because I've felt for the last 2 years that I essentially lost my purpose because I was too sick and I was homeless, and I could not provide myself with the tools to continue. So at least I'm doing a little bit better, and I have this computer that I can use, and I'm in a room that I'm renting now, so I'm not camping on the side of a river, or I've been homeless for a long time. I was living in my car and was camping on the side of a river, and it was really difficult. I've been fighting cancer and Lyme disease, and I broke my back about 14 years ago. It was a really, really extreme accident, and took me about 13 years, well, a little over 12, to be able to even start doing normal work again. So your prayers would be greatly appreciated, and I will be back soon. And remember, signs in the sun, moon, and stars. Blessings, family.